My name is Delia Marsh. I am 26 years old, 5 months ago. My mother burned my graduate school applications in the kitchen sink. She used a match from the drawer beside the stove. She waited until the paper caught before she said anything at all. Then she said, "Your sister needs it more." My sister filmed it. She stood in the doorway with her phone up before the first page even took. By 9 o'clock that night it was posted for her followers, with a caption about tough love. My father laughed. He never put his coffee down. 5 months after that, on Christmas Eve, there were 19 of us around my parents' table. My grandmother's chair sat empty at the head of it. My father had just finished a toast in which he said my sister's name 3 times and mine not once. Then the kitchen phone rang. My mother answered it. I watched the color leave her face in about 2 seconds, the way skin goes when a person understands something a beat before the rest of the room does. And then she said it out loud, in front of all 19 of us. "You mean, my other daughter, if you have ever been the one nobody in your own house thought was worth spending money on, stay with me. This one is for you. But you need to know what I do for a living, because everything that happened at that table comes down to it. I repair paper, torn deeds, water-stained ledgers, letters that came out of a flooded basement stuck together in a brick. I work at a light table with tweezers and a bone folder, and Japanese tissue so thin you can read a newspaper through 4 layers of it. I cook my own wheat starch paste on a hot plate, and if I cook it wrong, it goes gray and I start over. Here is the part nobody understands. When I do the work well, you cannot tell I was ever there. A mended page is supposed to look like a page that never tore. That is the whole point. That is the entire measure of whether I am any good. Which means that being excellent at my job looks exactly like never having done anything. You cannot post it. You cannot pass it around a dinner table. Nobody claps. I finished my degree at 25. It took 6 years. Because I paid for every semester myself, one at a time, while working at a print shop on Vineville Avenue. Art history with a chemistry minor, because you cannot treat a document if you do not know what the ink is made of. The day I walked, my family had a seat reserved in the 3rd row. It stayed empty. My sister had a photo shoot that morning at a farm out past Gray, and the light was only good until 11. My grandfather sent me a card. I still have it. My sister is Sabine. She is 23, and the house runs on her schedule. There is a ring light in the living room where the lamp used to be. You do not cook anything with an odor after 4 in the afternoon, because odor is not the problem. Smoke in the frame is. You do not run the dishwasher during a recording. You do not walk through the hallway between 2 and 6. None of that was ever announced. It settled over the house the way dust settles. And by the time I noticed it, it had been the rule for 2 years. Sabine is beautiful and quick and warm to strangers in a way I have never once managed. She can talk to a room. She can make a stranger feel chosen inside of 40 seconds. She is, in the exact language my father uses, someone you can show people. That is the whole thing. That is the entire mathematics of my family. And it took me until I was 26 to see it plainly. My parents are not cruel people. They are people who count what other people can see. Sabine is showable. A mended page is not. There is one more person you need, and she was already dead before any of this started. My grandmother, Ivy Marsh, my father's mother. She bound books for 31 years at a printing house downtown, back when that was a job a woman could get without anyone acting surprised. She died on the 28th of March, in her chair, in the afternoon, with the radio on. She was the only person in my life who ever asked me what I was working on and then waited for the whole answer. After the funeral, my grandfather walked me out to the parking lot. He took an envelope out of his jacket. It was cream-colored and soft at the corners from being carried, and my name was on the front in her handwriting, and it was sealed. I reached for it. He put it back in his pocket. "Not yet, sweetheart," he said. She was very clear about that part. I asked him when. He patted my arm, got in his truck, and drove home. That envelope sat in his jacket for 9 months. I thought about it almost every day. I had no idea what was in it, and I had no idea that she had already decided how this would end. July 24th, the Thursday. Hot the way Georgia gets hot in the afternoon, where the air stops moving and the house ticks. I had printed everything the night before at the shop, after hours, on good paper, 3 programs, 3 packets. Each one had the forms and the statement and the recommendation letters. And behind all of that, the part that took 2 years, the treatment portfolio, every object I had ever worked on, photographed before and after, with a written record of what I did and why and what I used. That is the document that gets you in or keeps you out. Nobody cares what you say about yourself. They care what your hands did. I set the 3 packets on the kitchen table because the table was the only clean flat surface in the house, and I went upstairs to find a box that would fit them. I was gone maybe 4 minutes. When I came back down, Sabine was standing at the table with a packet open in front of her. She was turning pages with one finger, the way you flip a magazine at a doctor's office. She did not look up. "Mom," she called, "come look what Delia's been doing." I want to be accurate here, because I have gone over it many times since. She did not sound angry. She did not sound like she was tattling. She sounded the way you sound when you find a receipt somebody left out and you think the household ought to know about it. My mother came in wiping her hands. She read the cover page. Then she read the second one. Her mouth got smaller. "How much is this?" "There are fee waivers. I already applied for them." "That is not what I asked you." "Nothing. It costs nothing." "Where is it?" I told her. "New York for one, and Buffalo and Delaware." She set the pages down very carefully, which is how I knew. "So you would be gone." 3 years. 3 years, she said. "And who sits with your father when his back goes out? Who runs your sister to the airport? Who does that?" "Delia." My father came in from the living room with his coffee. He had heard enough of it. He picked up one of the photographs off the top of the portfolio. A before shot of a ledger page, mold blooming across the bottom third. He held it out at arm's length, like a menu in a dark restaurant. Then he laughed. Not a mean laugh. That is what I need you to understand. It was worse than a mean laugh. 3 years of school, he said, so she can glue old paper. He never put the coffee down. That is the detail I kept. Both hands were busy, one with the cup and one with my photograph. And it never once occurred to him that he might need a free hand for this conversation. My mother gathered all 3 packets into a stack. She squared the edges against the table, twice, the way she squares mail. Then she walked to the sink. She turned the tap on for 1 second, just enough to wet the bottom of the basin and shut it off. She dropped the stack in. She opened the drawer beside the stove and took out the long matches we keep for the water heater. I said her name. She struck the match on the side of the box and held it to the corner of the top page. She waited there, holding it, until the paper caught and the flame stood up on its own. Then she said it. "Your sister needs it more. Paper burns faster than people think." The forms went first, curling brown from the outside in. The photographs took longer. There is plastic in a photo print, and the smell of it is not the smell of a campfire. It is chemical and slightly sweet, and it gets into the back of your throat. And I can still put myself in that kitchen in about 1 second flat. The mold ledger went black across the middle and folded in on itself. Behind me, I heard my sister's phone chirp. The little sound it makes when the recording starts. I turned my head. She was in the doorway. She had the phone up in landscape, braced against the frame so it would not shake. She had angled herself to get the sink, my mother's shoulder, and the flame all in one shot. She had started filming before the match was lit. That post went up at 9 that night. "Tough love," she called it. A mother who does hard things for her kids. It did better than anything she had put out all summer. And my mother watched the numbers climb on Sabine's phone at the kitchen counter and said, "Well, look at that." I did not say one word the entire time. Not while it burned. Not while my mother ran the tap over the ash until it went down the drain in gray strings. Not while my father carried his coffee back to the television. Here is what I did not tell them. I work with things that burn: paper, cloth, leather, glue. I have spent my adult life pulling documents out of house fires and flood basements. And there is one rule that comes before every other rule in my trade. You never keep only one of anything. Every page in those 3 packets had been scanned and uploaded weeks before. The photographs lived in 2 places. The portfolio existed on a server 400 miles away. It also existed on a drive in the bottom of my work bag, hanging on the chair my father had just walked past. They stood in that kitchen and watched a fire and believed it had done something. I let them believe it for 5 months. To understand why I could stand in that kitchen and say nothing, you have to go back 7 weeks. June 2nd. I quit the print shop on a Monday and told no one. The county archive sits on Poplar Street, in a building that used to be a bank. The conservation lab is in the back, past the reading room. The door says authorized personnel, and the lock has not worked since the 90s, 20 minutes from my parents' driveway. I had driven past it maybe 400 times. Marguerite Okonjo runs that lab. She is 54. She has been doing this work since she was my age. And she does not do small talk before 10 in the morning. She did not ask me about myself. She put a plat book page in front of me, a deed map from the 1890s that had spent a season under a leaking roof. The bottom edge was gone to pulp. There was a tide line of brown across the paper where the water had stopped and dried. "Show me," she said, and walked away. So I worked. I tested the ink first, because you always test the ink first. 1 dot in a corner where nobody will ever look. I washed it. I lined it with tissue and paste and let it dry flat under weight. While I was pulling the fills, I thought about the first page I ever mended. It was a hymnal page, torn clean out at the gutter, from the book my grandmother kept beside her chair. I was 22. I did it at her kitchen table, with wheat paste I cooked in her saucepan and a strip of tissue I bought with my own money. She sat across from me the whole time and did not say one word until I was finished. Then she turned the book to the light and looked at the seam for a long time. Marguerite came back at 4. She held the plat page up, tilted it, put it flat, and ran her thumbnail along the edge of the fill where it met the original paper. "Where did you train?" I did not really. "Somebody trained you." My grandmother bound books. She set the page down. "You have good hands and no bad habits," she said. "That is rarer than you think. Most people I get have one or the other." I sat in my car in that parking lot for 11 minutes before I could drive. I got home a little after 6, most nights, with the smell of paste still on my fingers. Nobody asked. My father asked exactly once, in the first week, where I had been. "Working," I said. "Good," he said. "Stay busy." And he turned back to the television, and it never came up again. Not in June, not in July. Not once for the entire rest of the year. I used to tell myself that the money made me useful. 6 years I had been handing over a share of every paycheck, groceries, the water bill, my sister's phone plan. I called it helping. I called it what a daughter does. Lying in bed that first week of June, with a new job nobody knew about, I finally said the true thing to myself in the dark. I was not being generous. I was paying rent on a place at the table. I had figured out, somewhere around 19, that I was not the kind of daughter this family wanted, and I had been quietly buying my way into the house ever since, which meant there was a question underneath it that I had never let myself ask. What happens the month I stop paying? September. I came down for water around 11 at night, and there was a contract on the kitchen table. Talent management. Brand development. $2,000 a month. Billed on the 1st. There was a clause about exclusive representation, and a page and a half describing the campaigns my sister would be considered for. Considered for? I read that twice. Here is a thing about my job that people find boring right up until the moment it matters. I spend my days deciding whether documents are what they claim to be. Wrong paper for the date on the page. a signature traced over a pencil line, a seal that came out of an inkjet instead of a press. You do it long enough and you stop being able to turn it off. So I saw the letterhead, which had a street address in Atlanta that was a mailbox store, because I have mailed things from that mailbox store. I saw that every promise in the document was a verb like considered, or submitted, or presented. Not one sentence in 11 pages said anyone would pay my sister anything. They were not buying opportunities. They were buying the appearance of having an agent. My mother came in behind me. "Put that down. Mom, this company does not get her work. It sells her the feeling of having someone. You have never done a single thing like what she does." Look at page 4. There is no payment obligation on their side. None. It is all one direction. My father came in then, in his undershirt, and he did not even look at the contract. "You are jealous," he said. "That is all this is." It has always been this. Sabine was in the hallway. She had her hair up and cream on her face, and she did not come in. She said one thing, mild as anything, and then she went upstairs. "Can you two move out of the doorway? You are throwing a shadow on my light." My mother sat down across from me, and then she said something she had never said to me before, and I do not think she said it to explain herself. I think she said it because it was 2 a.m. and it had been sitting in her for 38 years. "I sang," she said. I knew that. Church? And a Wednesday night place off Hardeman that closed before I was born. A man from a label in Muscle Shoals told my daddy I ought to come up there for a week and cut something. I was 20. Your father asked me that spring. She turned the water glass a half turn on the table. So I did not go, and nobody ever asked me again, and that was the whole of it. She looked up. "Your sister has what I had. I am not going to stand here and watch it go the way mine went. I want to be fair, because being fair is harder than being angry." That was the most honest sentence my mother ever said to me. She was not choosing Sabine over me out of spite. She was buying back a week in Muscle Shoals in 1988. The trouble is that she was buying it with money that was not there. I found out how much 2 weeks later. There was a stack of mail on the counter, opened and shoved back into the envelopes. One was from the credit union. It was a payment schedule on a home equity loan against a house my parents had owned free and clear for 11 years. $61,000 against the house. I read it standing up at the counter, in the dark, and then I squared the pages the way my mother squares mail and put the envelope back exactly where I found it. I did not say anything. I have thought a great deal about why. The simplest answer is that they had already told me twice that month what my opinion was worth, and I did not have a third one in me. The other answer is worse, and it is the true one. Part of me wanted them to find out the hard way. October, and this is where it changed from being ignored into something else. My mother caught me at the door on a Tuesday with my keys in my hand. "I need you to cover the light bill this month. And your sister needs a camera. The one she has cannot do the low light." "How much is the camera?" "Around $900. It is an investment, Delia." I put my keys down on the shelf by the door, which I had never done in the middle of one of these conversations, and I turned around and faced her. No, she actually laughed, not unkindly. She laughed the way you laugh when a machine that has worked for 6 years makes a new noise. "Excuse me," I said. "No, not the camera, not the light bill." "You live here?" "I have paid you every month since I was 20. Groceries, water, her phone. I have never once missed. And now all of a sudden you are counting." "I was always counting," I said. I just never said the number out loud. She put her hand flat on the counter. "Where is your money then? Because your check goes somewhere." "It goes into an account at a credit union on Riverside. I opened it in June. My name only, no joint holder. And the statements go to a post office box." That was the sentence that changed her face. Not the refusal. The post office box. Because a post office box means I had thought about it in advance. And thinking about it in advance means I had known, for months, that this conversation was coming. "You have been hiding money from your own family." "I have been keeping money. I said. From people who would spend it on someone else. She did not have an answer for that one. She went to the stove and started moving pans that did not need moving. And I picked my keys back up and left, and my hands did not shake until I was 2 streets away. Sabine was waiting in the upstairs hall when I got home that night. She had been listening. She always listened. That house has vents that carry a voice from the kitchen to the landing like a telephone. Both of us learned that before we learned to read. She leaned on the doorframe with her arms crossed. You embarrassed her? Go to bed. Sabine, she cried after. Then she can tell me that herself. And my sister smiled. It was not cruel. That is what I keep coming back to. It was the smile of somebody who has decided to be honest for 1 minute because honesty is going to be easier than the alternative. Do you think I do not know? I stopped. Know what? I said, and my voice did not come out right. About the money, about all of it. She lifted one shoulder. The camp in Nashville, the photographer, the management thing that is not going to work. I know they took it out of the house. I saw the papers, too. Delia, I am not stupid. I am just not you. Then why? Because they want to give it to me, she said. You want them to feel bad about it? Those are 2 different things, and only one of them gets you anything. And she said the part I have not been able to put down since they were never going to spend it on you. You know that. So it was going to sit there and rot, or it was going to buy me a camera. I did not take anything from you. There was nothing there to take. Then she said good night, and went into her room, and shut the door. And I stood in that hallway for a long time. The thing about my sister is that she was right about half of it. That is what made her dangerous. She was a person who had done the arithmetic of our family with total accuracy, and had then decided to be on the winning side of it. December 1st. I went back to the lab after everyone else had gone home, and I sat at Marguerite's desk because it has the better monitor, and I uploaded 3 applications. The last one took 12 minutes because the portfolio file was large. One of the 3 takes 6 people a year out of more than 60 who ask. I hit the button at 7:40 at night, in an empty building, with the reading room lights off and the radiator knocking, and there was nobody there to tell. I drove home. I ate dinner with them. Nobody asked me a single question, and I have never in my life been more grateful for it. December 24th. 5 months to the day. 19 of us. My mother does the table herself every year. Both leaves in the folding table from the garage, butted up against the end and covered so the seam does not show. Real plates. Cloth napkins she irons the night before. My grandmother's chair stayed empty at the head. Nobody discussed it. My mother set a place there anyway, plate and fork and glass, and put the photograph of her from the church anniversary against the water pitcher. I carried food. That is my job on holidays, and I have never minded it. Nobody at that table was under 30 except my sister and me, and the 2 of us were the youngest people in that house by 15 years. My grandfather came at 5. He is 86 and he still parks his own truck and he still shakes hands too hard. He hugged me at the door longer than he needed to. Then he put his mouth near my ear. Tonight is the night, he said. The night for what? Granddad. He held onto my shoulder a second, patted it twice and went to hang his coat up. That is all I got. At dinner, my sister's phone went around the table like a collection plate. She had put something out on the 22nd that had done well, and everybody had to see the number. They all did the same thing. The little widening of the eyes. The little nod. I passed it to my left without looking and thought a thought I am not proud of. You cannot pass a mended page around a table. There is nothing to see. That is the whole trouble with what I do. When it works, there is nothing to look at. Then my Aunt Roberta turned to me. She is my father's sister, and she was a nurse for 31 years. She is the only person in that family who has ever asked me a direct question, and then stopped talking to let me answer it. What about you? Delia, what is next year looking like? I opened my mouth. Delia is taking her time, my mother said, from the other end of the table, in a light, pleasant voice. the voice she uses for company. Not everybody has to be in a hurry. She is good with her hands and there is always work. My aunt looked at me. I looked at my plate. Under the table, I put my thumbnail into the side of my finger, hard enough to leave a mark that was still there on the 26th. Then my father stood up with his glass. He is not a speech maker. He gets through about 4 sentences and then he sits down and says, well, anyway, but he thanked everybody for coming. And he said it had been a big year for this family. And then he said my sister's name. He said it 3 times. He said Sabine had put in the work. He said Sabine was going to surprise a lot of people. He said the 2 of them had bet on Sabine, and he did not care who knew it. 19 people raised their glasses. My mother was crying a little, the good kind, dabbing under her eye with the corner of a napkin she had ironed. My sister had her chin down and her hand over her mouth, doing modest. My name was not said, not in the toast, not in the grace before it, not once between 5 o'clock and that moment. I sat there with my glass up like everybody else, and I remember thinking, with total calm, that I would get through this dinner, go home, and start looking for my own apartment in the morning. And then the kitchen phone rang. It is a landline. My father will not give it up. It hangs on the wall by the pantry, and it has a ring like a fire alarm in a school. 19 people stopped. Let it go, my father said. It rang again. Answer it, my grandfather said. He was not asking. My mother went. She had her napkin still in her hand. Hello? Yes. This is Mrs. Marsh. A pause. She turned her back to us, which she does when she wants privacy in a room with no doors. I am sorry, who is this longer pause? And I watched the color go out of the back of her neck, which is a thing I did not know you could see. Yes, she said. Yes, she is here. She is right here at the table. And then she turned around. She was looking straight at me, and her face had gone the gray of dishwater. She said the sentence I will hear for the rest of my life. You mean, my other daughter? Nobody moved. Somebody's fork touched a plate and it sounded like a dropped pan. I got up. I walked the length of that table past 9 people and I put my hand out, and my mother gave me the phone the way you hand somebody a snake. This is Delia Marsh. Miss Marsh, my name is Howard Bell. I am the attorney for the estate of Ivy Marsh. A dry voice, an old man's voice, careful with his consonants. I apologize for calling you on Christmas Eve. I want you to know that I do not do this, and that I have thought about it for 9 months. Then why are you calling? Because your grandmother instructed me to. A page turned on his end. Her words. And I am reading them to you on the first Christmas Eve after I am gone, when they are all sitting at that table together. You call the house phone, not Delia's phone, the house phone. I want them in the room for it. I looked down the table at my grandfather. He had both hands flat on the cloth and he was already crying, and he nodded at me once. Mr. Bell, I said, may I put you on the speaker? I would prefer it. I pressed the button and set the phone in the middle of the table, next to the gravy. Howard Bell's voice came up out of it into that dining room. Everybody heard the rest of it at the same time I did, but my father did not wait for him. What is this? He was on his feet. What did you do? Delia, what are you doing behind our backs? I did not raise my voice. I want that in the record. Because I had planned to, and I found that I did not need to. I submitted 3 applications on the 1st of December. I said, 3 weeks ago. Nothing you burned in July was the application. What you burned was the printout. You said I never said anything. You did not ask. I put my hand flat on the table. Everything in those packets was scanned and backed up before I ever printed them. That is not clever. That is the first thing they teach you. You do not keep 1 copy of anything that can burn. My mother had not sat down. She had one hand on the back of her chair. And where did you get the money for it? She said. Applications cost. Fee waivers for 2. $90 for the third. I paid it out of my check. What check? And there it was, the whole thing sitting in the middle of the table with the gravy. I have worked at the county archive since the 2nd of June, I said. The conservation lab on Poplar Street, 20 minutes from this house. I am paid hourly. My supervisor is named Marguerite Okonjo, and she has offered to write my letter for 2 years running. Nobody said anything. You have driven past that building, I said to my father. You have driven past it every single week of my life. My Aunt Roberta was the one who spoke. She said my name once. And then, Since June. Delia, honey, nobody in this house knew. He asked me one time, I said, and I pointed at my father with my chin. The first week, I said working. He said stay busy. That was the entire conversation, and it never happened again. And my father, who had been standing that whole time, said the thing that finished the evening. He did not mean to. He was trying to defend himself, and he reached for the only argument he had left, which was how much he had spent on his other daughter. We were not sitting on money, Delia. Do you have any idea what this year cost us? The camp in Nashville, the photographer, the management people, $2,800 a month between all of it, 14 months. He stopped, but it was out. Somebody at the far end did the arithmetic under their breath. My uncle said quietly, Gerald, out of what? And my father sat down. Out of the house, I said. $61,000 against the house. It came in the mail in September. My mother's mouth opened and nothing came out of it. Sabine did not say a word. She reached over very slowly and turned her phone face down on the tablecloth. 19 people. And not one of them was looking at anybody else. And then Howard Bell, who had been on that speaker the entire time and had heard every word, cleared his throat. Miss Marsh, if this is a bad moment, I can call back on the 26th. No, sir, I said. Everybody is here. That is what she wanted. Then I will proceed. Howard Bell said, in November of last year, Ivy Marsh established a trust. She funded it with $90,000. She was very specific about where it came from. It was the proceeds of the sale of her house on 3rd Avenue. She wanted her family to know that she sold that house herself at 83 and handled the closing herself. My father put his hand over his eyes. The trust is to be divided equally between her 2 granddaughters, $45,000 each. I heard my aunt breathe out. However, Howard Bell said, it is conditional. And before I read the condition, I am going to read you a sentence Mrs. Marsh dictated to me about why. Paper again on his end. He was not hurrying. I understood, listening to him, that this man had known my grandmother for a long time and that he was enjoying this in the quiet way old men enjoy things. Here it is. I am not paying for a diploma. I have known fools with diplomas and I have known great craftsmen without one. I am paying for the one who kept going when nobody was clapping. He let that sit. The condition, therefore, has nothing to do with school. A granddaughter qualifies for her share when she presents 2 things. First, documentation of 12 consecutive months of wages she earned herself, any employer, any trade, restaurant work, retail work, a shop, a lab. It makes no difference to the trust. 12 months, her own name on the check. And second, 1 page, in her own handwriting, describing what she is building. There was a silence in that dining room like the inside of a church. My mother got it first. I watched it land on her. Wait, she said. Mrs. Marsh, if you have the question, I will take it in a moment. No, wait. Sabine works. Sabine works constantly. She works harder than, ma'am, the trust does not ask about effort. It asks about wages. And my sister, who had not spoken in 20 minutes, said very quietly, from the middle of the table, I have never had a job. She said it flat. She was not being brave, and she was not being pitiful. She was reading out a fact she had known for longer than any of us. "I have never had a paycheck with my name on it," she said. "It all goes through the LLC. Mom and Dad put money in and I spend it. There is no wage. There has never been a wage. 23 years old, not 1 month of it in her own name. And here is the part I could not have written. I have gone over it 100 times since. It is either the cruelest thing my grandmother ever did or the kindest. The reason my sister does not qualify is exactly what my parents did to her. They gave her everything. They gave her so completely and for so long that when a dead woman finally asked her to show one thing she had gotten for herself, there was nothing to show. They spent $61,000 of their house building her a career, and they built her right out of the only inheritance that was ever coming. My mother sat down very slowly, like her legs had been taken away from her. She looked at Sabine. Then she looked at me. I watched a woman understand something at 58 that she should have understood at 40. "Miss Marsh," Howard Bell said, "do you have 12 months? "I have 6 years," I said. "Then I will need copies of the wage statements and your page. There is no deadline on the page. Take your time with it." "Mr. Bell," my grandfather's voice. He had stood up. "There is the other thing. There is Dale, if you have it with you." "Ellis," my grandfather said. "Dale was her brother." "My apologies. Ellis, do you have the envelope?" My grandfather took it out of his jacket. 9 months in that pocket. The corners were soft and gone slightly gray from being carried. And my name was on the front in her hand, and the seal was still whole. He came around the table to me and he broke it with his thumb. Inside there were 2 things. The first was a single sheet, folded once. Her handwriting, which was small and upright and never once in 84 years leaned over. The second was a page out of a hymnal. It was the page I mended for her when I was 22. I knew it before I had it all the way out of the envelope. I knew my own tissue. I knew the line of the fill along the gutter where the tear had been. And I knew the paste, and it had held for 4 years without cockling. She had cut it out of the book. She had taken it out of the book and she had kept it in an envelope. On the back, in pencil, she had written the date I did it. And under the date, 3 words. She was here. My grandfather read the letter out loud. "Because my hands were not going to be any use to anybody." "Ellis, if you are reading this out, then it is Christmas and they are all at that table and the girls are grown. I have one thing to say, and then you can put me down. I watched both of them for years. One of them was performing. The other one was working. I am allowed to know the difference because I did both. And I know which one gets applauded and which one gets a chair by the window at the end. Tell Delia the money is not a gift. She earned it before I ever wrote this down. And tell her I know exactly what it costs to be excellent at something nobody can see. I did it for 31 years. Every book that came out of my hands looked like a book that had never been broken, and not one soul who ever opened one of them knew my name. She knows. Let her hear somebody say it out loud. Ivy. There was not a sound in that room for a long time. My aunt had both hands over her face. My uncle was looking at the ceiling. Somebody's chair creaked, and I put the hymnal page down on the tablecloth, face down. So the 3 words showed I did not cry. That came later, in my grandfather's driveway, hard, for about 6 minutes. What I did instead was tell them the last true thing, and it was not a flattering one. And I said it standing up with my coat already over my arm. "I could have told you in July," I said. They looked at me. I had the job in June and the applications went out on the 1st of December. And there were 100 nights in there when I could have walked downstairs and said it. I did not. "Delia." I waited until there were 19 people in the room. I put my chair in under the table. I wanted witnesses. I am not proud of that, and I am not going to pretend it was noble. You should know it about me, because I am done with anybody in this family finding things out about me secondhand. Then I picked up my grandmother's page, and I went out through the kitchen, past the sink. I slept in my grandfather's spare room that night. He had already put a gooseneck lamp on the desk in there and cleared it off, which meant he had done it before dinner, which meant he had known how the evening was going to go. My mother came to the door on the 9th of January. She stood on the step with her purse in both hands and said she was sorry. I said I heard her. She asked how long I was going to do this for. Say what I do, I said. She looked at me. Say it out loud, on this porch, with a straight face. Tell me what your daughter does for a living. She said, you fix things. And then she stopped, because she could hear it. And to her credit, she did not try again with something better. That is where we are, I said. When you can say the name of it without laughing, call me. She stood there a minute. Then she went back down the steps to the car. Sabine sent one message. It came in at 4 a.m. on the 26th of December, and it was 11 words long. I knew what I was doing. I did it anyway. Sorry. I have read it a great many times. It is the only honest apology anybody in that house has ever sent me, and it is from the person who earned it the most, and I still have not answered it. I do not know when I will. I am not going to lie and say I have made peace with my sister. I have not. Anybody who tells you that happens in 8 weeks is selling something. In the lab, Marguerite heard about it from me in one sentence because that is all she wants. She said, good. Now go wash the McIntyre deed. That is what it sounds like when somebody thinks you are ordinary. It is the best thing anybody said to me all year. Here is where it stands. And then I am going to ask you something. On the 4th of March, the trust cleared into the account on Riverside, $45,000. The page I sent Howard Bell was 160 words long and took me 2 weeks to write. I mailed the original and kept a copy. I keep a copy of everything. My parents have put the house up for sale. That is not something I did to them. That is a payment schedule. Sabine got a job in February at a coffee place on Cherry Street. Her first check was $211. My grandfather told me that. She has 10 months and 3 weeks to go. And on the desk in front of me right now, in a glass frame I cut and joined myself, is a page out of a hymnal that a woman carried around in her purse for 4 years. I hung it backward on purpose. The music faces the wall. What faces the room is a date in pencil. And under the date, 3 words in my grandmother's hand. She was here. So that is what I want from you. Tell me the thing you are building that nobody in your house has looked at yet. Tell me what it is, and tell me what town you are listening from, because I would like to know how many of us there are. They are not going to see it. Most of them never do. But it is still there. And it will still be there on the day somebody finally turns it over and reads the back.